Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing some French country thrift flips. For my first project, I'm going to be using this little bookend kit that I found at the thrift store, these little curtain rod ends, and also these sweet little birds that I got from Temu. We're going to be combining all these pieces together to create some lovely French country bookends. To secure the bookends together, I'm using Gorilla's super glue gel first. I've put a line of the glue along the area where I want the other piece to sit, and then I'm joining them together. While that glue dries, we're going to take some of Gorilla's super glue again, and I'm going to add a little bit to the top of our little curtain rod end there, and I'm going to attach the bird. Now I did start this and I found that it wasn't sticking quickly enough, so we're going to add some of that Gorilla super glue, but then we're also going to add some hot glue so that it will hold it in place straight away and hold it there while it's drying. So I'm going to repeat the same process for each of the little birds. I will use a baby wipe to tidy up any excess glue. To further secure the bookends, I'm using my nail gun and I'm going to put 2 nails into each of these pieces just to make sure that it's nice and secure. The nails had a few issues going all the way in to start off with, so I'm just using a hammer to tap them the rest of the way in. Next, I'm going to be adding some texture to our sweet little birds. I'm going to be mixing Dixie Belle's Sea Spray texture additive with chocolate chalk mineral paint. After stirring that really well together, I'm using a chip brush to dab and stipple the product all over the little bird and the little curtain end. Once we have that texture on there, these start to look a little bit more cohesive. Now, I decided to add this product to the birds before I glued them on because I felt like it would just be a little bit awkward and hard to get to all those different angles. So we're doing it before we attach them to the bookends themselves. Remember, you can find a full product list in the description below, and most of these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Once both of the bird pieces are painted, I am moving on to the bookends themselves. I'm going to add the texture to the area where the bird is going to sit, the back and the other side of the bookends, but I'm not going to add the texture to the bottom of the bookends. I want to make sure that these will sit flat on a shelf, so I'm not going to worry about that. Once all of my pieces are completely dry, we need to attach the little bird pieces. So I'm going to add some of my Gorilla Super Glue Gel to the area around the rim there, and then I'm also going to use some hot glue, and I'm also going to build up a fair amount of hot glue in the center and then position it on the bookend where I want it to go. I'll repeat the same process for the other bookend. To make these pieces look a little bit more cohesive, I'm going to add some more of that sea spray mixture to the base where we joined our different pieces together. This is just going to help blend them together. Once my paint was dry, I got some of my Vintage Laurel Fusion Milk Paint. I already had this mixed up, and I'm going to go over the top of my bookends. Now, I'm not going to be careful to get full coverage here. I'm happy for my brush to skip over that beautiful texture we created, but I'm going to paint one coat over the top of each of the bookends, and then I am going to do what I love to do, which is use a heat gun to speed up the drying process. That's going to give us some wonderful texture. So here you can see that I am coming in with my heat gun. I'm speeding up that drying process. It's going to get us some lovely texture. Now that my milk paint is dry, I'm going to use a baby wipe to go in and do a little bit of wet distressing. I'm just running the baby wipe over the top of the details on the birds. I'm going to run it over the top of the milk paint itself because the texture that we created with the sea spray underneath is going to peek through. It's going to give it a really authentic old world look. I'm going to repeat the process for both of the bookends. If you look at these pieces side by side, one with the wet distressing and one without, it really does make a big difference doing that technique. To seal my bookends, I'm using Dixie Belle's clear Best Dang wax. I'm just applying it with my brush. And once I have the coverage that I want, I'm going to use a microfiber cloth to buff back the excess. And here are our finished bookends. I love how these turned out. I think it's amazing that you can take completely separate pieces and really bring them together to create something beautiful using paint. Let me know what you think of these in the comments. For our next project, I'm using a piece of wood that was originally a shelf from something that I refurbished, and I'm going to give it 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. This is going to be my base, and I often do this so that I can have a bit of a think about where I want to go with a project. It just helps to have that blank slate. Once my paint was dry, I grabbed my chocolate sea spray mixture out again and I'm applying it over the top with a chip brush, and then I'm grabbing IOD's silicone blades and I'm just pulling it through the mixture. I'm pulling it and dragging it, and I want this to look a little bit like old plaster. So we're going to be building up layers. So I'm just adding that texture, spreading it out, and then using that paint blade to pull it through again. So this is going to give us a really authentic old world look. Ultimately, my vision for this is that it's an old piece of wall from a chateau, basically, that's going to have some French artwork on it. So we have to think about layers when we're doing that. So you can see I'm really working that paint, pulling it in different directions, and then I'm using my hairdryer to speed up the drying process to create more texture. Once that layer was dry, I took some of Dixie Belle's Cashmere limited edition fall color. I poured it into a container, and then I'm going to grab some more of our sea spray texture additive. This is going to thicken up that paint nicely. I'm going to stir it really well, and I'm going to repeat the same process as before. However, this time I don't want full coverage. I want that lovely chocolate color to be peeking through underneath. I don't want it to be too blotchy or patchy. I just want hints of it, as if over time that creamy tone plaster has worn away to reveal another layer underneath. If you don't have access to one of these silicone paint blades, you could use a spatula instead. I'm also adding that same cashmere paint to the edges of our board. Once my paint was dry, I grabbed Dixie Belle's Au Naturel Voodoo Gel Stain. I'm putting a little bit out on a plastic lid. I'm misting my board surface and also the product with water, and then I'm grabbing a chip brush and again just adding more water so that it spreads, and then I'm spreading the product onto our board with the paint blade. So that is really going to help us get, again, that authentically aged look. I'm then using a wet wipe to dab off some of the excess and tone down the harsh spots that have a product buildup. I'm then going to be using IOD's La Chaise paint inlay. I'm trimming around the outside. This is one of these smaller designs that you get in the pack. Before I apply it though, I decided that I wanted to seal my paint because we are going to be applying our paint inlay with clear coat. So I'm using Dixie Belle's flat clear coat. I'm applying a generous amount of that flat clear coat over the top of our already dry coat that we added. And then I'm going to be positioning my paint inlay in the center and pressing down. I'm going to smooth out some of the wrinkles, but again, I want this to look old and weathered. If this looked perfect, it would look odd on the background that we created. I'm using a brayer to help smooth out some of the wrinkles. I'm then misting it well with water and then using a damp cloth to further add pressure and just make sure we have good contact. Once this has dried, it will be probably about a 30-minute wait depending on your weather, maybe an hour. I'm going to mist my inlay really well. And then after that's had about 60 seconds to sit, I'm going to very carefully start to pull it away. You want to take your time here and go really slowly so that you don't rip the design, because you could get another use out of this, maybe two. And once I've pulled that away and it's dry, I will seal it with Rust-Oleum's Clear Matte Sealer. To create a border around the outside, I'm going to be using some air dry clay in IOD's Classic Elements mold. I just love this little beaded trim, so we're working some clay into that. I'm using my thumb to push out any of the excess clay. I'm then flexing the mold and gently pulling it out. And I'm going to be making several pieces of this because that's what's going to go around the outside. So I'm just sort of positioning it where I need it to go, cutting it where I need to, and I'm going to have some gaps so that it looks a little bit older. And here I actually want to sort of square it off, if that makes sense. We're sort of creating a pattern in the border so that it looks like there's a little square in the top left hand corner. So I'm going to continue making that trim, and then once I have enough of those pieces, I am also going to be grabbing an element from the Swags mold, this round design, and I'm going to be casting 2 of those. Now you'll be able to see the pattern that I'm going for here. I've got them positioned out roughly where I want them to go, and I'm just arranging them how I want them. And again, I do want bits missing from this. I want it to look like a piece of salvage from a French chateau, so it would naturally over time have pieces of that border go missing, fall off. So we want to have little parts that are going to have some gaps. So I'm just keeping that in mind as I'm doing this. And I am just doing it by eye. It's not going to be perfectly straight. It's not even, but that's okay. We are embracing the imperfections. Once I've worked out my design, I am going to pull them off, and I'm going to paint them with that cashmere chalk mineral paint before I glue them down. If I glue them down and then I start to paint them, I'm going to end up messing up my design that we created earlier. So we're painting them before we glue them down. So you can see I'm just putting a little bit of glue down, and then I'm going to position our castings where I want them to go. In the end, I did decide that it was better to actually add the glue to the back of the castings. I just got too much glue buildup doing it this way. So here you'll see me speed it all up. You can see that I am grabbing my pieces in sections and painting them and then gluing them down. I didn't want to lose the design that I'd created, and I'm just going to work my way around until I have each of these pieces painted and glued down. Once my castings had dried, I sealed the entire piece with Dixie Belle's flat clear coat. This is going to protect them, but it's also a great base for our next step. Next, we're using that Au Naturel again. I'm going to pour out some more of it. We're going to water it down, and I am repeating similar steps to before, where I'm really using that water to help it spread, but also to really sort of tone down the intensity of it. I'm using a fan brush to work it into the details of our border, and then I'm going to be using a wet wipe as well to go in and dab off some of the excess. I'm going to be repeating the same process for each of the sections of our artwork, and I really feel like doing this again adds to that age and just adds to that authentically weathered look that we're looking for. In the parts where we left gaps, I grabbed some of that voodoo gel stain and just dabbed it in a little line there just to make it look like there had been a border there previous and it had fallen away, but there was a shadow left where it was. I'm then going to use some easy peasy spray wax, and I'm spraying it in the areas where I want to add some Dixie Dirt in charcoal. This is a powder form product. You add it to wax that is still wet. It needs something to grip onto. I'm just adding it in the areas where I think age would naturally accumulate. I'm using a small artist brush to do this. And then I'm also going to use a clean, larger brush to go in and blend that out. And anywhere that I get too much of the product, I can come in with a wet wipe and tone it down, or I can wipe it away completely if I make a mistake. So I'm going to repeat the same process. I'm going to work my way around our board, adding that Dixie Dirt, and this is going to add to that aged look. If you don't have Dixie Dirt, you could use a dark wax for this step instead, a glaze, or perhaps a paint wash. Finally, if you've been watching me for a while, you know I like to add a touch of gold to my projects if it's suitable. So I've got some of Dixie Belle's gold gilding wax, and I'm just very lightly hitting certain points. I don't want this all over the project. I want it to look like gilding that's worn away over time. And here's our finished French panel. I love how this turned out. I really feel like I've managed to achieve a look that reminds me of an old chateau. I feel like it looks like a piece of architectural salvage. But let me know what you think of this project in the comments. Our final project today is this candlestick that I thrifted. I sprayed it with Rust-Oleum's Clear Matte Sealer, and now I'm going to add some of Dixie Belle's Latte Chalk Mineral Paint and Sea Spray together. It's all about texture for today's video, and then I'm going to stir them really well. I'm then going to use a chip brush to apply this mixture over the top of our candlestick. So again, we're going to be building up some layers here, and I definitely want to hide that really bright paint. Some people might love it, but it's really not suitable for the look that I'm going for today, which of course is French country, my favorite. So I'm going to work my way around the candlestick, adding this mixture, dabbing and stippling to create that texture that we love, and then I'm going to let it dry. Next, I'm going to use some of our leftover chocolate sea spray mixture that we made earlier, and I'm going to dab that, especially in the areas where I can still see that blue paint peeking through. But I always like to have a few colors that are going to show underneath my final paint color. So I'm going to work my way around until I have all of those areas covered, and then let this dry too. I'm then going to be using Fusion's Toasted Coconut Milk Paint. I'm going to mix 1 capful into a container, and then I'm going to mix equal parts water into that mixture and stir it really well. I'm going to be applying one thick coat of the milk paint with a chip brush. You'll see that it's going on quite heavy, and I'm going to work it into all of the details all over the top of the candlestick until I have the entire piece covered. Once I had the candlestick painted entirely, I grabbed my heat gun and I sped up that drying process to create some texture and hopefully some cracks. I then came in with a wet wipe and did some wet distressing to reveal some of those layers that we created underneath. I then decided I wanted to add some of that gold gilding wax, so I'm going over the top of certain areas with our wax, but this isn't going to be our final step. I really want this to look old and weathered and like that gilding has also faded away, so we're going to add some of the gold wax, but then I'm going to come in with some milk paint next. I then applied some more of that toasted coconut milk paint just lightly over the areas that we had added the gold gilding, and then after that had dried, I then did a little bit more wet distressing to reveal just a bit more hint of that gold. To seal the milk paint, I'm going to use Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Clear. I'm going to apply it with my brush, and just like we did with the first project, I'm going to buff it back with a microfiber cloth. Wax really is the best way to seal milk paint. It's a much better option than using a clear coat because sometimes water-based products can reactivate it. And here's our finished candlestick. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video and that it's given you some ideas on how you can use Fusion milk paint, maybe Dixie Belle's Sea Spray, or the beautiful IOD molds and inlays to create decor for your home. Let me know if you had a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out to a friend that you think might enjoy it. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.